We're joined by football coach Jim Clements, and Jim, certainly an interesting time right now without being on the field this fall. But let's start with what it's been like for you so far at Kutztown. 6 seasons, 6 winning years. Is it tougher to get to that point where you're winning consistently, or tougher to stay at that point?
Well, if you start out winning, it's easier, I imagine. So when you that first year when we had a winning season, obviously made it easier in that second year. And I think each season kind of piggybacks and carries over. So, we went from 6 to 7 to 7 to 8 to 9 to 11, and it's just a trend. And the more the kids are within the program and the culture, the more they, knows what's expected of them and how we go about working and preparing every week. So I think it becomes habit for the guys, and that's what we're trying to establish. Everyone says, losing can become a habit, but so can winning. And that's what we're trying to establish here. And credit all goes to our players. They buy into what we do and they work extremely hard. And it's been good.
Same type of question, Jim, in regards to recruiting. When you're winning like this, is it easier to recruit guys, or is it somewhat tougher to get guys to come on campus?
It's a good question. I think you gain more interest. Kids see that, hey, they've won championships, and if they just look at the track record of what we've done, and it obviously is going to pique their interest. They'd much rather come look at a program that's in the mix to win a PSAC championship than one that's constantly struggling to even get to 500 wins. So I think that helps us. But again, it depends on the kid, and it depends on the position. Some kids may look at, hey, Colin DeGalbo's an all-conference quarterback. Kids, have been starting for the last 3 years. I don't, I want to go somewhere where, that guy's graduating. So some kids can look at it that way too. I always think winning solves a lot of problems. So I think the more that we do well, the more interest we're going to gain. Obviously, that's just common sense in my mind. They're the kind of kids we're looking for. We're looking for guys that care about football, when they want to go to a program that, they care about it. They want to do well.
Back-to-back PSAC championship games, back-to-back NCAA tournaments for the Golden Bears. What has this ride been like for you the last couple of seasons?
Well, we were really fortunate. We've had some really unbelievable kids. Our senior class, that 2019 senior class, won more games than any senior class in school history. It's about 106 years of football at Kutztown, and that class is sitting on top of everybody. So that's been awesome. Just watching these guys get better year after year, day after day, really, really come together as a group, as a team, pulling for each other. It's been awesome. It's why you do it. It's why you coach. And just to see the success that they're having and they're having off the field has been awesome for us.
For a time, Kutztown was no more for the individual in football. The Harpers, the Dennisons, the Reeds, the Mobleys. Now it's become the team success. How have the alumni responded to what you've been able to do the last half dozen years?
It's funny you say that, because that's a big part of our recruiting pitch too, is that, prior to coming to Kutztown, I knew about Kutztown growing up. I knew about the Andre Reeds and the Bruce Harpers, and I knew about John Mobley. But Kutztown had only won maybe 2 championships. So that culture of winning championships and team success was something that we were really interested in establishing here at KU. That's something we talk about quite a bit. I think it's awesome that we've been able to get Kutztown back to where it should be. I think our alumni have really supported us, and we get emails all the time from guys that played in the 60s and the 70s, and at our golf outings, the George, the Baldwin golf outing that we host every year, those guys come out and they're more happy to see each other and hang out and talk about the good old days. But it's nice to know that their program, they feel their program's in really good hands, and they feel that I feel really proud that that were doing well. So it's awesome for us. And every class that we graduate since I've been here, they stay in touch too, man. They're happy to see this thing going. They feel like they were a big part of turning this thing around. So it's been awesome.
When you got into coaching, who were some of your influences that kind of stay with you today?
Bill Manlove was my college coach. Bill recruited me to Widener University, and he's fantastic. Bill was, he's the National Football Foundation Hall of Fame. He's in the NCAA College Hall of Fame. He was AFCA president for all divisions in college football. They won 2 national titles at Widener, and was a better person, unbelievable man, great husband, great father, great mentor, great coach. So he has a lot of influence on me. And after my freshman year, they ended up getting rid of him at Widener, which was, I don't know how, but they did. He ended up going to be the head coach at Delaware Valley College for a couple years, and then he was hired to reestablish the LaSalle University football program, and he got that thing going before he handed that off. But when he left Widener in '91, when he went to Del Valle, he moved up to Doylestown. So we reconnected back in 2004, and he was on my defensive staff, and he was on our football staff for another 10 years. So I was blessed to have him with me throughout that whole – when I became a head coach for the very first time. Having a guy like Bill Manlove in your corner is awesome. So he's a huge influence. Bill Swan, the head coach at Westchester. Billy was my defensive coordinator in college, and I worked for Bill for a bunch of years at Widener. He gave me my first coaching job. And we had a lot of success. So, those two guys, Billy Cubitt, who was my head coach after Manlove left, was another guy that I stayed in touch with, and he moved around in the college ranks. But those 3 guys, and then my high school coaches, Rich Stetler and Rich Rosham, 2 guys that meant a lot to me growing up in the game of football.
You mentioned Delaware Valley. You spent 8 years there as the head coach, winning 66 games, multiple championships. What was it like for you going from the Division III level to Division II at Kutztown?
It wasn't a big change at all for me. It's all football. It's all relative. The biggest change was just getting to, I came by myself. I couldn't bring any of my coaching staff with me. The PSAC has a strong union, and the coaches that were here were going to stay. So when I took the job, I was coming solo 2 days before spring ball. So it was a little bit different in that regard. But yeah, it's all football. We had some really good teams at Del Valle that would have fared well in this conference, to be honest with you. I think some of the athletes that you're recruiting, you can get in on some other athletes that you might not have been able to get in on at Del Valle or Widener. But at both of those programs, they win a ton of football games. So you can still get in on some of those kids. It's just, to me, the biggest difference was in recruiting, because at those schools, the price tag's a lot more than it is at Kutztown. And that was one of the big reasons I chose to come to Kutztown, because we could make it more affordable for a lot of families. And that was a big selling point for me. But obviously the Division II, from Division III, it's really not that different. We're dealing with 8 scholarships at Kutztown, so it's really not that different. If we had 36, like a lot of the other schools in the country, it would be a little bit different. You'd have to handle that a little bit different. But it's not that different.
It's such an offensive game today, Jim, with the RPOs and the spread offenses. You're a defensive guy, and your teams have put up good defensive numbers. Is it tough to get kids to want to play defense with how much offense is prevalent right now?
Again, it comes back to recruiting. So, those are things that you hit on when you're recruiting a kid to come play for your program. A lot of guys in high school play both ways. Hey, I'm a wide receiver, I'm a safety. And well, what do you love? What do you want to do? I'm a wideout, but yeah, you're a wideout, but you probably aren't going to be a wideout for us. You might be a DB. Well, then we move on to the next kid. So the guys that we have playing defense for us love defense. They love it. They want to, impose their will on offenses every single snap. I mean, that's what they're about. So it's the mentality of the kids a little bit different. But I mean, to me, it's what these kids love to do. They want to be on an island. They want to go against the top receivers. They want to, get after the quarterback. They wouldn't see it any other way. Some kids do love offense more than defense. I'm a defensive-minded guy, so I kind of lean towards the defensive guys. You always kind of like those guys that play offense with a defensive mentality. You hear that a lot. To me, it's just the right football mentality, regardless if you're in the kicking game, defense, or offense. You got to find the right kid that just has a huge passion for the game, and then they're just excited to get an opportunity to step on the field, regardless of where it's at. They just want to make an impact.
When you look at the high school ranks in Eastern Pennsylvania and into New Jersey, how good is the football in those areas?
It's great. It's great. Ever since I was, playing football, coaching in college, the whole southeastern PA corridor, New Jersey, Lehigh Valley, Harrisburg. I mean, it's really good football. We really if you looked at the roster when I first got to Kutztown, there wasn't many out-of-state kids on the roster. If you look at it now, it's about 40% of our rosters are out of state. We've done a pretty good job of going out and hitting some areas that might not have been recruited heavily prior, and it's paid dividends for us getting quality football players. So you'll want to take care of your backyard the best that you can. But especially today, I mean, it's hard to miss on. There's so many good players out there in Maryland, and DC, and Delaware, New York, Ohio. Heck, we get kids from Texas, California are emailing us all the time. The football that in our backyard is very strong. Like if you took a 2-hour radius around Kutztown, you're going to find some really, really good football players. It's a little oversaturated in regards to recruiting. Like there's a lot of people that recruit New Jersey and the Pennsylvania area, but it's easier for us because a lot of kids nowadays want to stay close to home. When I was in school, everyone wanted to get the heck out. I want to go as far as I wait from mom and dad. Now it seems to be a lot more kids will want to be within, 2 hours, an hour and a half. And that's helped us because I think we're in a great location.
What are your hopes for your team this spring? What would you like to see happen?
I would love to see us be able to put a football helmet on. I would love to be able to go out there and practice. I just want to practice. Our kids just want to practice. We had 4 weeks with our guys in the fall where we did conditioning and strength training. That was it. All potted out, masked out. We didn't have one incident. We had a great run. Like our program did really well in that medium, but it's not football. It's hard to build that team camaraderie on Zoom. And we need to go out and play and compete and have fun. And that's our goal this spring. We want to have fun. We want to get back to fundamentals and enjoy each other.
I want to close with something that I hope you remember because it made a huge impression on me personally. When Kutztown had the 100 years of football anniversary and they had the gathering in the field house before you guys played, I believe, Shippensburg, you came in and you addressed some of the greatest players in the university's history. And when you were done, I would say 80% of them were ready to put the helmet and pads on. You were that inspiring that day. Where does that come from for you?
Um, I have a passion for the game. You know, I think there's a respect for the game and a respect to how you prepare, how you play, is just been instilled in me. And I love getting people fired up. I mean, you could ask a lot of my former players. I would love to be able to go out there and play with those guys. You know, I'd probably only give them 1 or 2 snaps, but I would do everything I could to get out there and do it. So I just have a passion for the game. I love it. And moments like that, when you're dealing with a group like that, is inspiring too. Now you're standing in front of guys that put everything on the line for Kutztown University in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and they're back, they're proud. There was our all-time team, like best of the best. So that was awesome to just be able to talk to those guys. And then to follow it up, you know, I think we said we were going to sink the ship that day and got a little fire, might have slammed the podium or something like that. But to follow it up where those guys got to get excited and then walk out and watch their Golden Bears back that up, that was special.
It was a great day, that is for sure. Congratulations thus far on a great run, and hopefully, Jim, you're back on the field really soon this spring.
I appreciate it. Thanks a lot, Steve.
It starts as a Golden Bear, but where you finish, that's untold. Because when the raw materials are put in the right hands, that's when you strike gold. It's good to be golden.
Marci, when you came to Kutztown, you replaced a legend in Betty Westner, who won well over 300 games in 33 years. What's it like to take over a program after somebody had done that for so many years?
It's Betty's unbelievable, and you know that because her alums all love her. When we had the 50 years of field hockey and they all came back, they just had such great stories about her, and it wasn't even, I mean, they were great on the field, but it was the off the field stuff. I think she was just so caring, and like they love her. And so the hard part is not necessarily following the wins, it's following what a good person she was and trying to uphold that standard that Kutztown has had forever, of having a classy program run by someone that, you know, did such an amazing job for such a long period of time, which we know at this point now in college sports is so hard to find or do. Someone that's in it for 33 years. It's just, and I've only been in it 15, so I can't even imagine hitting that 33-year mark of just constantly being successful and having winning teams and your players coming back and still supporting the program. It shows so much of who she was and what she did.
How much has she helped you over the last 7 years?
Yeah, you know, it's so funny. She said when she first left, she said, I don't want to be that person that's stepping on your toes or like creeping around the corner, like always there. Whenever I called her and had a question or needed something, she was there, and she still supports the program. Obviously, you know, they have 2 scholarship in her son's name, and she just has done so much behind the scenes. And if I called her at the drop of a hat, you know, she would help and be there.
You started as a head coach at a very young age, 24 at Cedar Crest. Then you went to Bryn Mawr, where you had 3 very successful seasons. Those are 2 institutions vastly different from Kutztown, but how did that prepare you for where you are now?
Yeah, it's actually interesting. They're both liberal arts women's colleges that cost, you know, at the time they both cost over $50,000 a year. So it is a huge difference going to a state school where the tuition's a lot more reasonable. Just a different type of kid that you recruit there. It's very, they're very unique schools, both of them, deep in tradition and some of the stuff they do. It's really neat. But I think what I've done is sort of brought some of that stuff to Kutztown, and I think it's neat to see that at a state school, and some of the things that you would do at those schools is just unique, like I said. And I can't reveal all the secrets because a lot of the stuff at Bryn Mawr, it was such an amazing place. If anybody's never been to that campus, you should go. It is one of the most gorgeous architectural places I've ever seen. But just some of their old traditions and things they do, they're secretive, but they're really cool. And it was a really neat place to be. But the kids are very different at the schools. And so the adjustment for me was, it wasn't difficult because I played at a state school, and I went to grad school at a state school. So that shift wasn't hard, but it was kind of hard to be used to something for 6 years at Bryn Mawr and Cedar Crest, which are very similar, and then come to a state school. I definitely had to change some things, but I also brought some things that I think make Kutztown better now.
You played it at Mansfield. You got that
Yes.
grad degree at Millersville, the two state schools you referenced. How did that experience help you to the transition as a head coach at Kutztown?
Yeah, so I knew automatically how tough the PSAC was. And I think that's something you don't know until you're in it and coach against it every day. The coaches, and I'm just talking field hockey, but it's pretty much every sport. The coaches in the PSAC are the best in the country, and they're absolutely amazing. And they keep you on their toes, and you need to. I was just talking to a recruit earlier today. You cannot not show up for any game against any team in the PSAC, because if you do, you'll lose. And so you have to be on your game at all times. And it was different at Bryn Mawr and Cedar Crest. There were a couple cupcake games where you got in Division III where, it might have been an easier win, or you knew could do that. That doesn't happen here. So you constantly have to be working, but I love that. And, some of the other coaches in the PSAC, they're tough, and you have to raise your game. I think they've made me a better coach just because I know I have to be, and I have to continue to learn and grow and do different things and try different formations and constantly be watching film because they're doing the same thing. So them being so good, it really pushes you to be better. But I knew that because I played against it for 4 years. And then I was a GA at Millersville in the sports information office, actually. So I still got to see the competitiveness of it, and I knew kind of what I was getting into.
So what would the Marci Scheuing of 2020 tell the 24-year-old just starting out as a head coach?
I didn't know then what I didn't know, but I didn't know a lot. Be patient. I cried on my first day at Cedar Crest. We had 7 kids show up for preseason. They were 0-16, I think, the year before I came. And it was a building process. But in 3 years, we were in a playoff hunt. And we were giving some teams some really good runs. So just be patient. You'll get through this. Stay dedicated to it. It's all going to turn out great in the end. And obviously now at Kutztown, 8 years later, being at Kutztown, the program's in really good shape, and not just on the field, off the field, in the classroom, in the community. It really has come a long way. And all those things, I've learned something different every single year, starting from that first year at Cedar Crest until now. There is a lot to be said about experience and going through some hard times and some different things. But at the end of the day, going 0-16 and getting beat 14-0 by teams that first year at Cedar Crest brought me to the Final Four at Kutztown, and it's just kind of interesting to see that progression over that time, but it was all worth it.
I'm glad you brought up academics, because you've been strong in the classroom as well. 2015, the top GPA in Division II. You've had some young ladies get some individual honors as well. They are student athletes. So how important is that part of it for you?
It's the most important thing, honestly. There's no professional field hockey league. And at the end of the day, I think that smart kids, like kids that do well in the classroom, do well on the field hockey field, do well in life. And so when I'm recruiting, I don't just take any kid that's great with a field hockey stick. You have to have so much more going for you, because I'm trying to make them better people. I look at these kids to be role models for my 2 daughters. And so they have to have a little piece of all of it to be successful in our program. We expect a lot out of them. We have study halls. Our team constantly has a high team GPA. They hold each other accountable. They help each other. People in the similar majors are always working together, studying together, telling what professors, would be good for them and different things like that. So it's definitely a culture that's been built here academically. And even before I got here, every year they did really well academically. So we just wanted to keep that up. And I think we've done a really good job with that.
Is it hard to pass on somebody who maybe doesn't check all of those boxes, especially the off the field stuff?
Yeah, no, I have found, it doesn't matter how great a player is, if they don't fit within the culture of what you're trying to do academically, athletically, and in the real world, it's not going to be a good fit no matter what. I don't care if they can score 30 goals a season. It's not worth it if there's any type of, if they're not going to follow what you're trying to do, because it is a culture thing. And we've beat some teams in the past that had more talent than we did, frankly, but because of the culture we've built and the type of kid we have on the team, we beat some of those teams, because it's all about heart. I always say the kids at Kutztown are just those blue collar kids that if I said go run through that wall, they would do it, because that's just the kind of kid that they're built like, and it's really a neat thing to see.
2019, last time you guys were on the field, you get to the PSAC championship game. You mentioned the NCAA semifinals, the Final Four. How rewarding was that season for you?
It was unbelievable, and I took time a mentor of mine told me to take time to think back to the hard times. And, when you went 0-16 at Cedar Crest and there was some really hard years there. And even at Kutztown, when I first got there, we went 7-10 my first year, and there was some learning curves. So to get where we got, just knowing we stayed the course and we had a plan, and this is what we wanted to do over those couple years. And every year you got a little better. So to hit that point, and obviously we didn't win the whole thing, but to be back in the PSAC championship for the first time in 31 years, I think that kind of tells you how hard it is to get there, because there's been some great teams at Kutztown and they haven't made it. So just to see all of that hard work and through the tears and just some of the harder times. And I had two baby girls during that time. And as a working mom, it's really hard to give everybody all the attention they need, your players, your family, your children. It becomes difficult. So to see that all happen over the course of the same time that I had children and all of that, it just was so rewarding for me in the end, just to watch. And I've had some of the most amazing assistant coaches too, over those 8 years, and they were all a part of that. And I can't explain it. And I do wish we would have won either the PSAC or the national championship, but to be in the championship game and to be at the Final Four, it's just something you can't explain until you're there.
And certainly, Marci, we understand the situation we're in right now, but was it disappointing, frustrating not to be able to kind of capitalize on that in the following season?
100%. You just feel so bad for the seniors. But luckily for us, two of our seniors, one's an All-American and one's an All-Conference player, will be coming back for us in the fall for a 5th year. So but there's two other seniors that we have that aren't going to do that. And it makes it really difficult for those kids. They have no closure. And I think that's the hard part about it. Yes, we could have had a good season, and I wish we could have bounced back from the Final Four and maybe ran for the national championship. But the fact that we didn't get to do that, it just gives them a little more fuel going ahead. But hopefully those seniors that aren't coming back know what they did and what they've done while they're here led us to all those great achievements.
Eastern PA is a hotbed for field hockey. I don't know where it ranks, maybe nationally. Maybe you can shed some light. Number one. That's what I kind of figured. Yes. Is that a blessing and a curse for you? Because there's got to be all kinds of coaches in this area.
Oh my gosh, it's exhausting. Just within 2 hours of where we are in Division II at least, almost all the best teams in the country. In the Final Four last year was Westchester, East Stroudsburg, and Kutztown were 3 of the 4. And they're both within an hour drive of Kutztown. So to say it's exhausting is putting it mildly. So you just have to get creative and try and find, especially at Kutztown, we don't have as much scholarship money as some of the other schools. So we try and find sort of diamond in the roughs and really look in maybe other places where you look at some of their rosters, a lot of their kids are from the same areas. We try to go outside of that. And what we really try to do is develop those kids over time here. And that's what you saw last year. Those 8 seniors, it was a complete development over 4 years with those kids. And they just blossomed into this amazing group that just accomplished so much on and off the field. It's unbelievable. But that's a big part of it for us, is the development of those diamond in the roughs that maybe, aren't getting those big Division I offers or whatever. But they work hard, and that's why they are successful.
Your husband, Matt, has been a pitching coach at Franklin and Marshall for 16 years. Different
Yes.
sport, different gender, but how much
Yes.
do you bounce things off of each other?
I can't ever don't tell him I said this, because, I don't want him to get cocky, but I don't think I'd maybe still be coaching or be able to do this without him. He is my rock. And there's been some hard times, some hard losses where I come home and I'm not okay. And he's the reason I get back at it, because he constantly tells me I'm a role model for our daughters and for the team and different things, and to constantly hold myself to that standard. And he's right. And you're allowed to be upset and you're allowed to take a loss hard, but it's kind of how you react to it then the next day. How are you going to come to practice the next day? You're going to be sulking, you're going to be mopey, or are you going to go out and work harder to try to beat that team next time? So he constantly keeps me on my toes. I joke and he works at Penn Manor High School, which is one of the top field hockey programs in the country. So I always joke to get me their water girl or whatever, because I'll take her. But he has just been amazing through the process.
Do your daughters already have sticks in their hands?
You could say that, yes. Reagan, the 6-year-old, is playing in the Manheim Township League, and I have her in the Wilson League, and she plays for High Sticks Club. So, but I promise every time I say, do you want to do this? I don't tell her she has to, but I think she really does enjoy it. And so it's fun to have a lot of friends that are in the business, because I know where to send her and where the good coaches are and that kind of stuff. So that's what we're doing, but she just has fun with it. The 3-year-old just follows everything the 6-year-old does and can't quite do everything yet, but she's going to try.
I want to finish, Marci, by circling back to what you said about wanting your players to be role models for your daughters. Do your players understand that, not just for your daughters, but for other young girls as well?
I'm very clear about this. In our very first meeting of the year, that's something I talk about, is when they're not around our field and when they're in town and when they're in the classroom, they need to be sitting up front. They need to be holding doors for people in town. They need to be doing these extra things, especially when they're wearing that Kutztown field hockey on their chest, because it's about so much more than them. It's about all the alums that have come before them. And it's a program, it's a culture. It's kind of what Betty created and what I'm trying to carry on. And it's also just making them good people, making them better people. We just had a story of a friend of mine. Her son was being bullied on an ice hockey team in North Dakota, and he was ready to quit the team. And I said, hold on. I said, give me his cell phone number. I'm going to have my players, reach out to him. And they don't know this kid at all. And I said, maybe they can tell them stories of maybe they were bullied and how they overcame it, or just positive, inspirational stuff. So for the next couple hours, his phone just continued to go off with my players just telling this kid different stories of their own and just different things and really trying to lift him up. So he sent us this video of himself, and he was telling us that he's not going to give up because of how my team made him feel. And so he went to practice that night, and his mom let me know he got the work hard stick that night that they give out after practice. And the coaches said, I don't know what got into him, but he's like amazing today. And so I think that just kind of shows you what kind of kids they are. They all just couldn't wait to make this kid feel better. And so that's the kind of stuff that I'm trying to teach them, is just to not just on the field. Obviously, it's great if they can hit the ball 100 miles an hour, if they can score 30 goals. But at the end of the day, if they can't go out into the world and give something back, then they're really not doing much. So that's what we really try to focus on.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations to you and your players for making that happen. That is for sure. And when we kidded before we started recording, you're on pace right now. I'm not trying to jinx you or put pressure on you, but you're on pace to beat Betty's record if you stay long enough. Is that something you would love to achieve, or
I
too far
want
down the
to
road?
win a national championship. That's my ultimate. That's what I want to do. After being at the Final Four, it really, like, you get there and you want to win it so bad, but you get experience when you're there. The ultimate goal is to win a PSAC or a national championship. The wins, that doesn't matter to me. It's honestly about what the team can accomplish. And it just is more about what we can build over time. And do my kids have jobs when they leave and that kind of stuff. So the wins are great and it's fantastic. And deep down, of course, those things are nice. But honestly, give me a national championship over any of that stuff and I'll be happy for the rest of my life.
I agree. We're not going to put Betty on notice just yet. We'll let her go. Thanks for taking the time, Marci. We appreciate it. Congratulations on a great 2019 and best of luck next time you get back out on the field.
Thank you so much, Steve.